Hey everyone! Okay, so we're getting reveal videos this week for the Monk today, Sorcerer tomorrow, Cleric on Wednesday, and the Bard on Thursday, and I'm going to be doing reactions to all four of them. They're doing a reveal for Dragon Design on Friday that I will not be doing a review video for because Colby from D4 Deep Dive and I are working on something together that day. That hopefully you'll see fairly soon. But as for the Monk, I'm going to have this video up ASAP after that video is premiered, and then I will do the same for the rest of this week. Timestamps below will take you to whatever topic you're most interested in, so if your main interest is the Warrior of the Hand Monk, just click that timestamp and it'll take you there. And my standard spiel, yes, I've read the new Player's Handbook in detail. I'm currently making some reveal videos for it, which I can start releasing to you on August 1st. Until then, I like videos like these because whenever Todd and Jeremy reveal something new, it gives me a chance to talk about it and give you my impressions. So, it is possible that there is nobody who has ragged as much online as I have with regards to the 2014 Monk. So Monk Redesign was of particular interest to me. I played the Unearthed Arcana version multiple times and it worked really well. You can check out a link above if you want to see one of those sessions. But for now, let's see what happened between the playtest and the new book. And got my coffee. Here we go.
Tell me all about the new things in the Monk.
There is so much. When we embarked on creating the new Player's Handbook, we knew that the Monk was going to get a lot of attention. Partly because the Monk's satisfaction scores over the last decade have often been, unfortunately, a bit low.
Yeah.
And the Monk, in terms of actual play numbers, has tended to be low as well. That combination told us this class needs some attention.
Yeah.
Now, every class got a lot of loving attention, but we knew the Monk was going to need some deep work done to it. And the deep work that we did in the Monk, similar to deep work we did in the Ranger, really amounts to this class and the Ranger largely being new classes. When you look at the features for the Monk, you look down that list, you're going to see a lot of familiar friends, but also you're going to see some new things. That is evident right away at first level when you dig into the main feature of the Monk at that level, martial arts, where you will find out that right away your selection of Monk weapons has been broadened to be all simple melee weapons as well as martial melee weapons that have the light property. That's going to give you some more flexibility.
And right away, one notable difference there is that the Great Club, which is a two-handed weapon, is now also considered a Monk weapon. And of course, it wasn't before.
Ability than you had before. And we've also now made it so that you can now make, with this feature, a unarmed strike as a bonus action, regardless of what else you're doing on your turn. We used to have it so that...
And this was in the playtest as well, and Colby and I talked about this in our video we did reacting to the Unearthed Arcana version. And as we explained in that video, that is a huge change and a fantastic improvement, because the way that it worked before is you had to take the attack action and then you could do an unarmed strike as a bonus action. Now you can just do unarmed strikes as a bonus action to start off your turn if you want. There are I think it's common knowledge now that unarmed strikes are now used for grappling and shoving, and so being able to do that at the start of your turn instead of after the attack action gives the Monk a huge advantage. So this seems like a small change, but it's actually a big buff.
The Monk had to set up their bonus action unarmed strike before they could do it. Now you don't need the setup. You just simply have always the option to make an unarmed strike as a bonus action. Now, there's even more going on here than that suggests, because we have in the rules glossary redesigned the unarmed strike itself. And this is a redesign that affects all characters, but will be especially felt by monk players because of how often monks make unarmed strikes. So it used to be in 2014 that the unarmed strike was just a way for anybody to deal some damage if they were without a weapon.
Yeah.
Now, monks and a few other characters were happy to make unarmed strikes because they often were very effective at them. What we've now done is we have made it so that when you make an unarmed strike, you now have 3 options of what it does. It can deal damage, like it did before, or you can try to initiate a grapple, or you can try to shove your target.
And I'm glad he said that, because I would have had to have edited that last bit out, because as I was saying it, I'm like, I don't know if they've officially revealed that, though it was in Unearthed Arcana, so we kind of expected it. But he said it, so I can
Really
leave that
what
in.
we've done is we've taken 3 different things that used to exist on their own in the game, dealing unarmed damage, grappling,
Yeah.
and shoving, and we've combined them all into your unarmed strike.
You've kind of weapon masteried unarmed strikes, basically.
And we did this for everyone so that you had sort of a single place you could go to for the cool options for your character when you are throwing down with your fists, or you're wrestling, or you're just trying to push someone back. But we also wanted to make it so that the monk could really benefit from this, because this means, unlike in 2014, any time the monk is making an unarmed strike, including as a bonus action, that unarmed strike could be dealing damage, or it could be starting a grapple, or it could involve shoving somebody. That means the monk has an amount of tactical versatility that is with their unarmed strikes, which is akin to the tactical versatility that our weapon users have who are using weapon mastery.
Absolutely.
But a whole lot is fun is hiding out in the unarmed strike itself and how it then combines with the monk's various abilities that use the unarmed strike. And that is evident right away in the martial arts
You
feature.
can just be pushing someone all around the map.
Yes. And also, boom, bonus action, starting a grapple.
Yeah.
Later on, as monks are able to get more and more unarmed strikes on their turn, each of those unarmed strikes could be a different one of these options.
Yeah.
You could be shoving one person, starting a grapple with another, punching them, kicking away the other person with the shove. It is really cinematic and exciting in actual play.
Yeah.
The monk, through this martial arts feature, can now use their dexterity rather than their strength to set the DCs for the new grappling and shove options.
So I'm glad he said that, because I was worried he was just going to skip that. But yeah, and that was in Unearthed Arcana, is so monks could use dexterity for shoving and grappling. And when I play tested it, I did a lot of grapples. And grappling with a monk is now fantastic, because you're also combining it with a greater speed. So if you're dragging somebody, you can do the speed as well. So they really have turned monks into fantastic shovers and grapplers with the martial arts feature. And it really has a huge impact on gameplay.
That are inside the unarmed strike. So we wanted to make sure that the monk who is most interested in having a high dexterity and secondarily a high wisdom, that they did not need to then sort of also need to have a really good strength. We wanted monks to be able to take that dexterity and have it even support them when they're using their grappling and shoving options within unarmed strike. Monks also have their martial arts die, and this is the die that they use.
I should probably also mention it, because of course in the 2014 rules, if you want to grapple somebody or shove somebody, it's an ability check, opposed ability check. So the grappler shover does an athletics strength check, while the person resisting it does a either dexterity acrobatics or athletic strength, and you need to beat the defender in order to achieve the grapple or shove. And as he's mentioned, they've changed it to saving throws, and this goes with a theme that you're going to see in the new book, where if you want to do something, it's an ability check. If you want to resist something, or prevent something happening to you, then it's usually a saving throw, which is more consistent because rules like grapple and shove kind of went against the idea of saving throws being something resisting something happening to you.
For their unarmed strikes. It's also the die that they can use with their monk weapons, and as they go up in level, at various times the die improves, which then means, of course, the damage of their unarmed strikes is improving, and the damage of their monk weapons is potentially improving, depending on what the weapons damage die was originally. Across the board, the martial arts die has been improved. And so it now starts at a D6 at level 1 and goes all the way up to a D12 at level 17.
And that's a nice thing to have. But in the first iteration of the playtest monk, that was pretty much all they gave them. And I just don't think it is as big a deal as maybe they thought it was. But it's a good enhancement to get.
Which means monks have just simply had a buff across the board on their damage output. Because we realized, digging into the intricacies of the class's math, that it just was not delivering the amount of damage that it should. And so this is a rare case in this player's handbook of a class just simply getting
a flat-out damage buff.
Just a flat-out damage buff.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that because this is also the unusual class that has so much of its damage passing through a single feature, and in this case it's the martial arts feature. Whereas we have other classes where damage is instead routing through different weapons, it's routing through different spells, whereas with the monk, so much funnels through this level 1 feature. You ready for some more monk excitement?
Yes, I am ready for more monk excitement. I'm concerned that this is going to be a 3-hour video on the monk.
So, at level 2,
yeah,
we made it a level.
Wow! We got to level 2.
So martial arts, basically, if you read the playtest, it's not exactly the same, but it's very, very close. And you won't really notice it. You won't notice any differences unless you look carefully.
In the new feature called Monk's Focus, this is a replacement for a feature that used to be called Key, and this has changed.
So there's the next big reveal. So we knew that in the playtest, they changed the name of Key to Discipline, and so they got a feature called Monk's Discipline, and they have changed it again. So I'll let you talk about
way more than just name. It is, I mean, other than sort of some surface details of you get some points to spend on various things, there are so many functional changes in here that I'm glad just for that reason alone that the feature has a new name to signal to people.
Yeah.
Pay very close attention to this because in the new Monk's Focus, you have a pool of points that are now called focus points to spend not only on the options that are in this feature, but also a number of the options that appear later in the class. And anyone curious about using any monk material that was published prior to this book, anything that referred to key points in the past should essentially just be read as now referring to focus points. Inside this feature, you still have these sub-options that were there before, but they're really only here in name. Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. I say they're here really only in name because so much has changed functionally, because there have been major enhancements here. First, Patient Defense now lets you take the disengage action as a bonus action without spending any points.
Wow.
Before it required points.
Yeah.
Now, when you get Monk's Focus, you simply gain the ability to take the disengage action as a bonus action. Similarly, the Step of the Wind component of Monk's Focus lets you take the dash action as a bonus action. So what these now do that relates to focus points is you can now use focus points to enhance them. So for example, you could spend a focus point with patient defense to, yes, take the disengage action as a bonus action, but also the dodge action at the same time. Similarly, Step of the Wind on its own lets you just take the dash action as a bonus action, or you can spend a focus point to be able to take the disengage and dash actions together and have your jump distance doubled for the rest of the turn.
Jeez.
And so now spending your focus points, rather than it unlocking the base ability, is instead about enhancing the base ability.
And the really nice thing here is, so monks always kind of trail behind rogues in terms of Step of the Wind and patient defense because, or Step of the Wind for sure, because rogues got cunning action at level 2 that allowed them to do the dash, disengage, or hide action as a bonus action, no resource cost. Monks had to expend resources to dash or disengage, and as a bonus action, and that just didn't seem fair. So now monks cannot do the hide action as a bonus action like rogues can, but they can do the dash or disengage action as a bonus action without expending a resource. So it narrows that gap. And then if you're willing to expend a resource, then you can go up and beyond that, as Jeremy just explained. So that actually gives them an enhancement that can make them better than rogues at that, though it costs them to do so.
Now, Flurry of Blows is the one of these three options within Monk's Focus that only has a version where you spend focus points on it.
Yeah.
And that is you spend a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. The reason why it doesn't have a sort of freebie version like Patient Defense and Step of the Wind.
Oh, you've already gotten that.
Exactly. You got the freebie version back at first level.
Yeah.
Because at first level, you now get the ability to just, for free as a bonus action, boom, use your unarmed strike.
Yeah.
So Flurry of Blows gets the same enhancement as the martial arts or the martial arts attack. With martial arts, you can attack unarmed strike as a bonus action, no longer tied to the attack action. Flurry of Blows, you can attack with 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action, no longer tied to the attack action. So once again, that is a bigger enhancement than it sounds. In playtests, we were Flurry of Blows all the time before attacking so that we could grapple, and it made a big difference.
So now what Flurry of Blows does is let you enhance that by spending a focus point. I really love this new approach where, again, your focus points in a way are about amping up the volume rather than needing them to do your baseline
You don't need them for the identity of this class. Yeah.
Exactly. Because now the way we've structured it, even if you're out of focus points, you can do all the baseline monk things.
Yeah.
And focus points now become just really cool spice. That's how you crank it up. Focus points are also critical for some of your higher level abilities that can be used only with focus points. Now, we also took to heart, though, that even though we had lessened how many of your baseline things require focus points, that monks have often felt focus point constrained and too constrained. Because we always want, when there is a limited resource in the game, for there to be a sense of limit. I mean, that's the point, for you to feel like your resource decisions matter, and for there to be that growing sense of danger as you see, you're basically your power tank going down toward empty, whether it's focus points or spell slots or something else. But even with all of that in mind, we felt we could give monks a little more breathing room. And so with that in mind, at level 2, they get a brand new feature after all this other brand new called Uncanny Metabolism. And what this lets the monk do is, when they roll initiative, just decide to regain all their expended focus points. You're getting this feature now at level 2. Now, once you use this feature, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. But that means once per day, when a battle starts, you can just say, I get all my points back. And that's not all. You also regain a certain number of hit points when you do that. So this uncanny metabolism is you just drawing in your personal resources and saying, I'm ready for another fight. And that's probably going to keep you going for the rest of the adventuring day, or at least a good part of it.
Nice.
Now, when you get to level 3...
Okay, so Uncanny Metabolism, we saw it in the playtest. The original version in the early playtesting wasn't until level 7. And it was like a minute or something like that to use. I really like when you roll initiative, you can use this feature, no action required. They've included a few features like this scattered throughout the different classes and subclasses, and I really like that feature. It is really smooth to use. So yeah, very happy. Uncanny Metabolism has basically gone through as written in the playtest, and it's great.
We're at level 3.
You now get deflect attacks, and this feature has been redesigned so that it is more versatile than it was before. This used to be the feature that gave you a chance of catching a projectile that was fired at you, and if you managed to zero out the damage completely, you then had the option of trying to hurl it back. And then there were some complexities of the nature of that projectile affected the damage that you were sending back. We wanted it to be easier and more fun for monks to use this ability. And so what we did is we now made it easier, just the whole operation, for the monk to figure out, how they reduce the damage. We no longer care about the physical quality of the thing that's hitting you. All we care about in this rule now is that it deals bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. So whatever it is that's coming in, you can try to deflect it and reduce the damage. And then if you reduce it to 0, and that reduction, by the way, is you roll a d10 and you add your dexterity modifier and your monk level. And if all of that combined zeroes the damage out, you have the option of spending a focus point to then basically redirect the attack's force towards somebody else. And now that other target now has to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you get to do an amount of force damage to them based on your martial arts dice. And remember, your martial arts dice are way better than they used to be.
Yeah.
This feature gets even spicier at higher level, and I'm going to skip ahead because later on...
Eventually it's energy.
Yes. All the way at level 13, you get a feature now called Deflect Energy, where you can now use deflect attacks to deflect any damage type. No matter what it is, whatever energy is coming in, the monk with their preternatural abilities can use their focus to bounce that fire over there, deflect that wave of thunder towards somebody else. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In addition to...
Okay, so deflect attacks and deflect energy are probably my favorite changes to this new monk, because one of my chief complaints about a monk in 2014 is their armor class isn't great. Like, they have unarmored defense, right? So dexterity plus wisdom plus 10. But that doesn't give you the same defense as a good armor does, especially armor and shield. And then the monk also is dealing with a D8 on their hit points, when other classes that tend to go into melee are often D10 or potentially even a D12. So they have fewer than average hit points and lower than average armor class, and you put those together, and you have a character that is going to be going down a lot in combat. And deflect missile, although it was really cool when it happened, it didn't happen enough because the monk usually is a melee class, right? Like you can make a range monk, but usually you're going into melee, and so you tend to face melee attacks a lot more than range attacks. And so being able to deflect those with your reaction, no resource cost, is a huge defense boost to the monk that it really needed. And you know, there's been so much talk about how the monk could be improved before this process ever began. And people have, tossed around ideas for increasing the unarmored defense or increasing hit points or both. But this third option gives the monk a unique way to enhance their own defense. That's just for the monk to have. And I really like it. And playtesting it, it was terrific. It did precisely what it should do. So I'm very happy with the way these turned out in the playtest, and very happy to see that they have made it to the official version.
Their damage output being improved, we have also looked at ways to improve their survivability. And that's evident in how their superior defense feature works at level 18. It is also evident in their disciplined survivor ability, which is what they can use to reroll saving throws. It's also especially evident at level 10 in their self-restoration ability, which is a new feature that combines elements that they used to have in other features, where when they get to the end of their turn, if they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned, and again, this is at level 10, they can just say, "No, I'm not." And before, this had an action economy cost associated with it. No.
Yeah, so the 2014 version is called Stillness of Mind. It's a level 7 feature, and it allows you to use your action as a monk to remove the charmed or frightened condition from yourself. And first off, those kinds of features, they just don't feel great when your turn comes up and you use your action and you got nothing left. Your turn is basically over. You can move, right? But you can't even do your unarmed strike because you didn't take the attack action. So you basically lose your entire turn to get rid of this condition. And often, if you're charmed or frightened, you might not even be able to pick what your action is going to be. Like if you're hit with the fear spell, for example, or hypnotic pattern, for example, you don't get to expend your action or choose what you're going to do with your action. So you couldn't even use that feature. So now, with it automatically happening at the end of your turn, what it means is if you're just regular frightened or regular charmed, so it's not like hypnotic pattern or anything like that that has additional effects, you can still take your turn. You can still take your actions. You probably have disadvantage. You might have restriction on who you can attack, but you can do something. And then it goes away. And if you can't choose your action because you are under the effects of hypnotic pattern or fear, for example, then at the end of your turn, it still works. So it's improved in both regards, though you will have to wait longer for it because it was level 7, now it's level 10.
Oh, not anymore. Now just the monk, they get to their end of their turn, and it is literally this good. Of they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned. Nah. We really wanted monks to have this kind of superheroism in how not only they fight others, but also in how they're able to keep themselves alive. We also have adjusted in a level 10 feature called Heightened Focus what you can do with Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. So we already enhanced those 3 options back at level 2. Well, when you get to level 10, they all get even better. And we did this because these 3 options are so fundamental to the monk. One being about keeping themselves alive in the form of patient defense. Flurry of blows is essentially their damage output option for their monk's focus, and step of the wind is their mobility option. And again, all 3 get better at level 10. In between, when they got those features back at level 2 and them getting improved at level 10, they also now have their stunning strike, which has been adjusted. Now, this is one of the only places in the monk where a feature's power got.
All right, so he didn't talk much about the level 10 feature where Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind have been enhanced. So up on D&D Beyond right now, they have put out the article for the monk. They've been doing that with all these videos, is they put up an article that kind of goes over the stuff that was revealed in the video, but sometimes these articles have additional details. So Heightened Focus is one of those. So it says, improves Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, Step of the Wind when you expand a focus point, which Jeremy Crawford said in the video. But now these are the details, and these are the same as the playtest. So Flurry of Blows becomes 3 attacks with your bonus action, and that's just an automatic upgrade. You're not spending an additional focus point or anything. Patient Defense grants temporary hit points equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die. So remember, you're disengaging, you're dodging, and now you're getting temporary hit points as well. Plus, you have a reaction defense with deflect attacks. So if you want to go tanky, you really can. And Step of the Wind allows you to move a willing creature with you, which is a great feature. I used this in one of the playtests. In fact, the one I linked at the beginning of the video here, and it was clutch. So very nice feature, and super happy to see that it went through as it was in the playtest.
Toned down a slight bit.
Right, yeah.
And we don't feel bad about it, given how much the monk has been buffed.
Yeah.
We've now made it so that Stunning Strike can be used just once per turn, because there have been cases in the past 10 years where Stunning Strike can get a little out of hand if a monk player uses it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think the sting of that limitation will pass very quickly when people realize that we've now made it that if the target, even if they succeed on their saving throw, they're still affected to a certain extent. So if they fail their saving throw against your Stunning Strike, they're stunned, as you would expect. If they succeed on their saving throw, their speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against them has advantage.
Okay, so there's the big change from the playtest. Okay, and in the playtest, if they made their saving throw against Stunning Strike, they took damage. That's been removed. They no longer take damage. Now they get a fairly minor debuff, but something. Their speed is halved. Next attack against them has advantage. So that is a pretty substantial change. I would say it has been nerfed from the playtest version. And I was recently told that nerfed, it always has a negative connotation, but I don't think so. I don't think the word nerfed necessarily has a negative connotation. Depends how you use it. And I am okay with the change to Stunning Strike because ultimately the issue with Stunning Strike, there are multiple issues with Stunning Strike in the 2014 version, but one of the issues with it is that it was such a better option for the use of your key points than all your other options, that your other options didn't get used because you got a limited supply of key, and you have this one option that's just better than all the other options. So of course that's where all your points go. So all the cool little features you could do with other things, why bother? You should be doing Stunning Strike, right? I don't want to throw back an arrow that I caught because, I might lose a Stunning Strike to do that. So what they had to do is they had to, making Patient Defense better. If you use Focus Point, great. Making Step of the Wind better. If you use a Focus Point, great. but those are only really useful if they're not just worse than Stunning Strike. So bringing Stunning Strike into line with all the other cool features, I think, was important. And think about it this way: Stunning Strike is still actually probably better than the 2014 version, because the 2014 version, you spend one key, you attempt to stun, they make a saving throw. If they fail, they're stunned, and if they succeed, nothing happens. And now you spend a key, you do the Stunning Strike. If they fail their save, they're stunned, and if they make their save, something happens to your benefit. So I would still say potentially Stunning Strike is better. The main thing, of course, is that you can't do it as often. But one use of Stunning Strike in this new version and one use of Stunning Strike in 2014, this version has an advantage over it. And what else do I want to say? Basically, it's been nerfed, and I'm good with it. I'm okay with this new version of Stunning Strike. I like the playtest version too. My only issue with it was narratively, it was a little bit weird. Like, I figured if you're going to have somebody take damage if they fail and not take damage if they succeed at a saving throw, that needs to be narratively explained because it's not obvious as to what's going on. So I would have been fine if they kept it as it was and provided a narrative explanation, but I did think it needed that if they were going to do it. They had to figure out why somebody who makes their save is taking damage and somebody who fails their save isn't. And rather than that, they went for, you're not quite stunned, but you have a little bit of stun there. You're a little slower, you're a little easier to hit.
When you use Stunning Strike, it's going to have an effect on your target. And really, they're making a saving throw to find out what that effect is going to be. So, in the end, Stunning Strike actually got buffed.
Yeah.
It's really, we've limited how often you can use it.
That's perfect.
So on top of all of that,
Yeah.
monks, like everybody else, get Epic Boon at 19th level, and also then have some majorly enhanced subclasses.
One of my absolute favorite ones.
Okay, so that's all they're going to go through. They also didn't talk about the capstone, and the capstone is fantastic. And yeah, so the capstone, he didn't reveal it in the video, but again, it's the one from the playtest. Wisdom and dexterity scores go up by 4 each to a maximum of 25. Remember that wisdom is your DC for, things like Stunning Strike. It also impacts your armor class. Dexterity also impacts your armor class, and initiative, and your attacks, and your damage. So there's just so much packed into this capstone. It's really good. Lots of enhancements to the monk. The grappling and shoving using dexterity is massive. That's one of the most impactful things. Martial arts die improved by a step is good. And then we have flurry blows and martial arts attack no longer requiring the attack action is a very nice improvement, especially considering monks are now good at grappling and shoving. Like, you can shove an opponent prone and then beat on them with advantage, right? Patient defense better, step of the wind better. You can recover focus points far more easily than you could recover key points. You can now deflect melee attacks, and eventually you can deflect any attack in the game. You can deflect. You got to use your reaction, but very nice feature. Stunning Strike. There's another enhancement on Stunning Strike he didn't talk about, but they did mention it in the article. So it says requires a monk weapon or unarmed strike. That's the only restriction, which means if you throw a monk weapon, you can deliver a Stunning Strike. So it will allow you to do Stunning Strike at range, which is an enhancement. Let's see. And level 10, just take my word for it. Nice improvements to Flurry, Patient Defense, Step of the Wind. No longer needing an action to remove Charmed or Frightened is nice. The level 18 feature, no longer requiring your action, is nice, though there's some redesign to balance that out, but just in terms of how it feels in gameplay, it's nice. And here is what happened with superior defense. So it's the same as the playtest. So the 2014 version, you could expend your action and become invisible. Now, no action. You just, at the start of your turn, you expend focus points. You get resistance to all damage types except force for 1 minute. We're reducing damage with deflect attacks. Now we're talking about resistance to all damage. We're adding temporary hit points with patient defense. You can really turn on the defense. Now, it's not going to give you advantage on all attacks like invisibility would, but I still think this is much better. Just the ability to do it without an action required. And so that is a huge amount of enhancements to give to one class. And when I look at things that were taken from the monk, they can't stunning strike more than once per turn now. He talked about removing the poison condition at level 10. That means you're not going to be immune to it, right? As the old monk eventually was. And nothing else you're going to care about. Nothing. So, yeah, very, very happy with the changes to the base monk. So, let's get into the subclasses. I bet we're going to start with the Mercy monks.
Just because just from the look of them and the mix of healing and necrotic damage is the Warrior of Mercy.
And this is a subclass that appeared for the first time in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything,
my favorite monk subclass up to now, my favorite monk subclass in the game, period.
Appeared with the name Way of Mercy, and people will see that all of the monk subclasses now have a naming pattern of Warrior of something.
Yeah.
It's the same subclass as before, just now with Warrior at the front instead of Way of. And in several of our classes, we have unified how that class's subclasses are named. When we get to the Sorcerer, we'll talk about how all their subclass names have been unified. And we've done that in a variety of places to not only get the names so that they're all structured the same way, but also to set up how we'll name the subclasses in future books. So the Warrior of Mercy, of the 4 monk subclasses in the book, is the one that has evolved the least, partly because
it's most recent in the new designs.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's the most recent. And so
there is an important redesign in this subclass that I hope he talks about, because I would like to talk about it.
The main thing that has happened here with this monk, who's all about both help and harm, has been integrating it into the revised class. So otherwise, this is the subclass people know and love from Tasha's Cauldron, but now fully integrated into this completely redesigned monk class. But the subclass features themselves, other than some tweaks in wording to make it so that they fully integrate, it's what you saw the last time you played and enjoyed this subclass.
It's an incredibly fun subclass.
Now, when we get to the other 3 subclasses...
Okay, so there is something, I will say, I'm not a fan of something they did to the Warrior of Mercy monk. And thank you, Monk Article. I can talk about the change to Warrior of Mercy because I want to talk about this change. So I'm just going to highlight it on the screen here. The most significant change is that Flurry of Healing and Harm can now be used a number of times per long rest equal to your Wisdom modifier. So Flurry of Healing and Harm, 11th level feature. And here's what it does. It says, when you use Flurry of Blows, you can replace each of your unarmed strikes with the use of Hand of Healing. You could do as many as you wanted. This is the Tasha's version. And if you, once per turn, you could replace, or you could add your Hand of Harm to one of your Flurry of Blows attacks. And I understand why that had to be tempered, because at level 10, they've made Flurry of Blows do 3 attacks instead of 2. So it actually gave the Mercy Monk a significant buff. And Mercy is already really good. But, if you can replace all your attacks from Flurry of Blows with Hand of Healing, and they give you an additional attack with Flurry of Blows, well, they've made that feature better, right? If you're enhancing Flurry of Blows and Flurry of Blows is better, then that's really good. So I understand that they had to do something about it, but I don't like this because what it does is it's going to give you a resource to track, and you're already expending a resource to do the Flurry of Blows in the first place. So now you're tracking two different resources for the same feature. And I just don't like that design. I wish they had instead said, you can only use your Hand of Healing once per Flurry of Blows or twice per Flurry of Blows or something like that. I would have been much happier with that. This limited use, this is a big, big downgrade to this feature, in my opinion. And I was not, of all the subclasses for Monk, I'm pretty happy, but this one feature, I really wasn't happy with it. And 99.9% of the time, the changes to the Monk, I was totally on board for. This one, I thought, I wish we had seen this in the playtest so we could have let them know, our thoughts on that. Though I don't speak for everyone, so maybe you might think of it differently than I do. But I just don't like the way this was designed.
We have the Warrior of Shadow, we have the Warrior of the Elements, and the Warrior of the Open Hand. So the Warrior of the Elements completely replaces the Way of the Four Elements. The Way of the Four Elements, sadly, in terms of satisfaction, was often the lowest rated subclass in the 2014 Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
And so looking at it, we realized the best path forward is to replace it.
Yeah.
And the Warrior of the Elements is a subclass that people got to see a draft of in the Unearthed Arcana process, and now the final version is here in the book. This is a monk who is all about channeling the elemental forces of the multiverse and using those elemental powers as part of their martial arts. And so you're going to see a number of really fun things here related to that. First off, these monks are able to increase the reach of all of their unarmed strikes as they use wind and water and fire and earth to extend their reach. So you can imagine, cool tendrils of water going out to make it so that this monk can punch someone like 10 feet over there.
Yeah.
And it's not Mr. Fantasticing or one-piecing over there with a stretchy punch. No, it's the elements themselves reaching out to extend their reach. We also give them, and you alluded to this, we give them a new cantrip, the Elementalism cantrip, that allows them to shape the elements around them, shape water, fire, earth, etc., so that they can feel like they have some of this elemental magic even when they're outside combat. And when you get the subclass, because by the way, this is all right when you first get the subclass, you gain these benefits. You gain elementalism, you gain your extended reach, and you also are able to do your elemental strikes. And so whenever you hit somebody now with that extended reach that the elements are giving you, and you are dealing damage to them, you can first off change that damage type to one of a list of damage types that we provide, all elementally themed. But then you can also force the target to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you can move them around the battlefield as either wind is blowing them, or water is causing them to flow away, or fire is causing them to stumble back. Whichever element it is that you're deploying, you suddenly, with that extended reach, get to be like, no, you're here, you're now over there. So a lot of tactical fun is waiting for you right here at level 3 when you first get this subclass.
And I playtested, as I think I mentioned that I playtested the Unearthed Arcana Monk multiple times. And the subclass I playtested the most was Warrior of the Elements. I playtested it twice at very different levels. And yeah, that third level feature is still really good even at high levels. It's just an exceptionally good feature. A really strong introduction to a subclass to have. Think about just having that extended reach with all your attacks, several different damage types you can choose from, and a free move around the battlefield with every single attack. And you're not expending much focus on this feature. Very, very nice. Nice.
Then when you get up to level 6, you gain the ability to essentially extend your elemental power to a greater distance. Now you'll be able to take a magic action, expend some focus points, and then cause an explosion of elemental power up to 120 feet away from you. And this is a 20-foot radius sphere explosion.
Whoa.
Where you now deal damage, and it is based on your martial arts dice. And so this is something that will scale with you as your martial arts die gets better. So even better than we did with the Way of the Four Elements, we're giving you the ability to easily just bring some spectacular elemental effects to the battlefield. And rather than expecting you to choose a particular element that you use all the time, the theme of the Way of the Elements, and it's partly why we changed the name of the subclass, rather the Warrior of the Elements, is you are tapping into the whole elemental chaos. You're not necessarily tied to any particular elemental plane. Instead, you're tapping into the chaotic mixture of all of them, which is one of the reasons why we made it so that you can choose every time you use these abilities to pick a different one of the damage types that are available here. It's also why even in the art for this subclass, you'll see in the monk's image that she is channeling multiple different elements all at the same time. Rather than just being a monk of fire or earth or wind or what have you. We also have made it so that while you have those benefits going of that extended reach and you're using your elemental...
I think he's going on to talk about a different feature. So the level 6 feature that he's talking about, where you make the big explosion 120 feet away, 20-foot radius... the level 3 feature is a banger. They can't all be bangers, and the level 6 one is a bit of a letdown as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's a huge deal. Like I said, I playtested this subclass multiple times, and it was fantastic. And I just in one of the playtests, I used this feature a couple times, and it was disappointing a couple times just because. Anyway, it didn't keep up to what other people could do with their action, or even I could do with my action if I had done something else. But that level 3 feature, so nice.
Strikes, which I should have mentioned earlier, you have to actually activate. They're not on all the time.
Right.
You have to spend focus points to turn them on. And so when you're just going about your day, you don't have water extending from your hand.
Distracting.
But yeah, if you use focus points to turn on these powers, well, that power that you've turned on just gets better and better as you go up in level. So once you reach level 11, whenever you've activated your elemental attunement, that's the name of the feature that gives you that extended reach and those elemental strikes, now you also have a fly speed and a swim speed because you are carried aloft by the winds.
Right.
So there's a change from the playtest there. So at level 11, the Warrior of Elements got a very nice feature where if they use their Step of the Wind, then they would get the fly and swim speed. And what he's telling you now is that's no longer the case. Now it's active whenever you are using your elemental attunement feature back from level 3. And he talked about how you won't have it active all the time. And sure, you're not going to have it active 24 hours a day. But I will say that there is no reason you can't have it up every combat. It is easy to use. I find it... I don't see how you would play the Warrior of Elements monk and not be able to use this every combat. So you should have a fly and swim speed for every combat. Once you get to level 11.
Right.
You are pushed along by the waters. So now you have supreme mobility on top of the outstanding mobility that monks already have. Then at level 17, you get a feature called Elemental Epitome. And this also improves your elemental attunement ability. You now get an elemental damage resistance that you get to choose, and you get to choose it at the start of every one of your turns. So,
Oh, wow.
So every time your turn starts, you just get to decide if that turn, or rather until the start of your next turn, you have resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. And in certain battles, that could be really useful to be able to just keep switching those.
Yeah.
Also, we've made it so that when you use your Step of the Wind, while your elemental attunement is going, your speed increases. So now you're even faster. And as you move around the battlefield, you can cause damage to foes that you're moving by because of all this elemental power that is swirling around you. In many ways, you can almost imagine the Warrior of the Elements as the cousin of the Circle of the Sea druid,
right?
Because both of them are going to have these sort of destructive auras around them, but they use them in very different ways, although they can, the two of them, fly and swim together.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of think of them as buddies. You also, in this capstone ability, have the option to just once per turn deal some extra damage because of all of this elemental power that is swirling around you. And so
this level 17 feature, you pretty much saw it in the playtest. Very nice feature. Warrior of Elements, I still think is a very strong subclass. Level 3 is exceptional. Level 6 is not great. Level 11 is terrific, like fly and swim, pretty much every fight, great. And level 17 is good as well. So overall, a great subclass, but I don't think they necessarily balance the features against each other. But if you take them as a whole, this is a strong subclass.
All of these features combined make the Warrior of the Elements this elemental powerhouse who's going to be moving around quickly on the battlefield, who has not only an extended reach, but also a built-in magical ranged ability to blow up an area. I think going to be super exciting.
So now let's talk about the Warrior of Shadow. I have played this subclass quite a bit. This has had significant quality of life improvements in it. Makes you even more dangerous. If you wanted that Shadowfell, the threat in the darkness feeling, this is the subclass for you.
Yeah, we wanted to make it so that the Warrior of Shadow was even more suffused by shadow than it was before. And one of the ways that we did that is we preserved the ability for this subclass to cast the darkness spell, but now we've made it so that you can see in that darkness. Anyone who has used that spell, you know that part of its power is very few creatures in the game can see through that darkness.
Yeah.
And so being able to create that darkness and see in it, and then later use your own darkness that you've created to fuel your shadow step, the teleportation that these monks get that relies on you being in dim light or darkness, you can start creating synergies with yourself that are just super fun.
Yeah. The advantages you get by being able to see someone in the darkness and them not being able to see you are extreme.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you now are in many ways the scary companion to the assassin rogue.
Yeah.
I was just making that connection in my head as well. So he said, there's kind of a connection to the assassin rogue. To me, the assassin rogue is the mundane assassin. Well, the Warrior of Shadow, especially this new version, is like the supernatural assassin. So if you were a fan of cheesy ninja movies in the 80s like I was, and you wanted to live that fantasy of this supernatural ninja, I would go with the Warrior of Shadow over Rogue Assassin.
It just as the Warrior of the Elements is the buddy of the Circle of the Sea Druid, the Warrior of Shadow and the Monk is definitely the buddy of the Assassin, and
Right.
I could see these two being a really scary pair hunting down the bad guys. We have taken that Shadow Step ability, which is so core to the identity of the Warrior of Shadow, preserved it, but then improved it at level 11 with improved Shadow Step. We've now made it so that when you use your Shadow Step, you now have the option of expending a focus point to make it so that you are not required to start or end the teleportation in dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And because we found that as cool as Shadow Step has always been, one of the most difficult aspects of it were being in an adventuring context where there is no dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of double solved for this here by giving you this darkness you can create and see in,
Yeah.
so you can use that.
Because if you are physically in the light, that's still an issue.
Yes. And we wanted to make sure you could always use your core ability
Yeah.
as that's a part of this subclass. But there's more. In improved Shadow Step, we've also made it so that if you spend that focus point, you not only don't have to start or end in dim light or darkness, but as part of the same bonus action when you teleport, hey, you also get to make an unarmed strike.
Yeah.
Immediately after you teleport. So you can just suddenly appear next to somebody and kabam.
Yeah.
Finally, at level 17, we have a much improved Cloak of Shadows ability. And this not only lets you turn invisible,
Yeah.
but it also makes you partially incorporeal.
Yes.
So that now you can pass through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. And you can use your Flurry of Blows, which is normally costs a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. You can now use that while you're in this limited time Cloak of Shadows form. You can use that Flurry of Blows without spending any focus points. Now, instead, you are spending focus points to activate your Cloak of
Yeah.
Shadows, but once you've activated it, you can just be this shadowy force moving around and punching or kicking the heck out of things.
I mean, obviously, this has nice synergy with the Gloomstalker Ranger as well as the Assassin, but I would either like to see these two together or fighting each other. The Fey Patron Warlock.
All right, so so the Warrior of Shadow, he didn't really talk about changes from playtest, but I will say that if you like the playtest version, you're going to like this version.
Porting all over the battlefield and the Shadow Monk doing the same thing, and they're just trying to get at each other. It's like a constant chess match.
It's not a PvP game.
But it is in my head. Not when I play,
It's a co-op
but
game.
it's fun. Listen, sometimes the best adventures start off with everyone not getting along. Guardians of the Galaxy.
But anyone who is like you, what I would encourage is absolutely.
What's going to come next?
Oh, no. It's a DMing tip.
Yeah.
Absolutely take inspiration from classes and subclasses for the monsters that you create.
Yeah.
Because, there are some really cool abilities here that you absolutely could riff on in a monster or NPC. And then you can absolutely create some of those awesome moments that you're thinking of.
Yeah. And that brings us to the final warrior.
Yes, the Warrior of the Open Hand. The Warrior of the Open Hand we can kind of think of as the most monkish of the monks.
Yeah.
Really leans into the core kit of the class, the unarmed strikes, the high mobility. And what we wanted to do here is just make sure it was delivering those goods in as fun a way as possible. We took, for instance, Wholeness of Body at level 6. And before, this was a way for this monk to heal themselves. It took a whole action. Now it's a bonus action. So we want you to be able to just weave this into what the other things you're doing on your turn. And you can also now use this multiple times per day. And this is a part of our effort to enhance monk survivability. We also have a brand new feature in the Warrior of the Open Hand called Fleet Step. And what this feature does is whenever you take a bonus action to do anything other than Step of the Wind, you can also use Step of the Wind immediately after that bonus action.
And, okay, so if you were following the playtest, you would have probably saw the last version of the Open Hand Monk. It was in the final playtest. I really liked it. Colby really liked it. And I was curious to see if they'd make any changes when they put it in the official version, because I believe it was extremely popular. They did make a change, and he just revealed it. So Fleet Step in the playtest, if you took a bonus action other than Step of the Wind, then you could also use Step of the Wind as part of that bonus action. And what he has just revealed is that now, so they've reined it in slightly. It's not a huge deal. It's not a huge deal, but it is a change. If you take a bonus action other than Step of the Wind, you may use Step of the Wind immediately after the bonus action. So the choice in terms of when you do that movement has been removed from you. That is only going to happen after the bonus action. So before, you could have done it before the bonus action or in between, right? So that's just something that I noted when I looked at the official version, that has been reined down slightly. But otherwise, I mean, it's not a huge deal, and Open Hand looks really good.
So I was just telling you about, these monks can now heal themselves as a bonus action. Well, the very next feature combos with that, and it means even if you use your bonus action to heal yourself, you can also Step of the Wind.
Yeah.
And that's because we wanted, while some of the other monk subclasses are, again, getting things like flight or teleportation, we wanted these to be the monks who are just zipping around the battlefield.
Yeah.
And even when they're like patching themselves up, it's like, oh my gosh, how fast is she running?
Yeah.
And then finally, we revised Quivering Palm. This was the I touch you, and then at some point you may or may die. We've now made it so that it now deals a truckload of damage on a failed save and a smaller truckload of damage on a successful one. It does no longer just instantly zero a creature out. This was one of the only other places in the Monk where we needed to adjust the power down a little bit, because Quivering Palm before essentially had kind of the theoretical possibility to deal infinite damage, because it could reduce any creature no matter how.
So he's saying that they powered it down, and we saw this in the playtest, the new Quivering Palm that doesn't reduce a creature to 0, and there were enhancements to it that I thought more than made up for the virtually 0 chance of actually like reducing an important villain to 0 hit points, since they can always make their saving throw with a legendary resistance. I actually think this Quivering Palm is more powerful than the old Quivering Palm, and that's my opinion. But it has been enhanced in ways that are very important. So he's talking about it being scaled down, and yes, in some ways it was. But I think overall, I like this Quivering Palm more than the old one.
How high their hit point pool was down to 0.
Yeah.
And this was just not scaling well, particularly with some of the higher level encounters that we want high level characters to be able to have, and have those encounters still be a challenge.
Yeah.
So what we did, even though we took away the deal infinite damage portion of Quivering Palm, we did make sure that the damage it deals is, as I said, a truckload.
Okay. Perfect.
So all of these things together amount to a class that has been reimagined, redeveloped.
Yes.
We've play tested the heck out of it, and it is a ton of fun.
When you pre-order,
Yeah, so if you liked the playtest Monk, the last version, you're going to like this version of the Monk. The changes from the playtest are fairly minor. There were some. There was some speculation that the satisfaction ratings were so high that they might print it word for word. They didn't print it word for word. Stunning Strike is probably the biggest change from that, but even that's not that big a change. So, yeah, if you like the playtest version, then you're going to like this version. I like the playtest version. I like this version. I am so glad that I'm going to have a monk in the game that is official, that I like. And I'm looking forward to playing one. So that is fantastic. And I will say that, and they didn't mention it, they did something with Warrior of Mercy that I wasn't a fan of. But I still think it's a good subclass. But just the way they did it didn't strike my fancy. But overall, I have nothing but praise for what they've done with the monk. I think they've done a fantastic job. And tomorrow we will be talking about the sorcerer. So you're going to see where meta magic landed and where they might talk about some of the spells. We'll see, because there were some spells that were kind of sorcerer spells that were added to the playtest. So we'll see. They might go over those. So I will be reacting to that video and getting it out probably a similar time that I got this video out. It all depends how quick my production goes and how fast YouTube decides to upload it, which varies, but I'll get it out to you as soon as I can. And then the cleric and then the bard. So there will be 4 videos this week, and which is good because last week I only had 2 videos. So I will talk to you again tomorrow.